I am always the first to tell my students I don't know everything there is to know.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, licensed architect in Nevada, professor, creative strategist, and design expert. He is an accomplished architect and designer who has contributed to major large-scale projects like the Flamingo in Las Vegas, M Resort, and Caesars, just to name a few. He's a prominent voice in architecture and hospitality academia with a focus on design research, innovation, and sustainability. He's an associate professor of architecture at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, and co-founder of Aero AI. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Glenn Nowak. Welcome, Glenn.
Good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to see you and Happy New Year. And I would just like all the listeners to know that I'm a huge fan and supporter of radical innovation. And it's an event that's put on every year in New York City. And with this event, there's a lot of submissions for really incredible, unencumbered, free-flowing, pushing the envelope design ideas from products to projects. And associated with this, there's a lot of judges and advisors. And I met Glenn a couple of years ago at this, but we really hit it off just talking at a cocktail party in the lead up to this past year's event, and just had a really wonderful conversation. And that's really why I love our industry and also going to so many of these incredible events that are out there. And I highly suggest, whether it's Radical Innovation or other events, just get out there and have a conversation with a professor, because it's not often I get to talk to professors. I love them, Glenn, and thank you for being here to share your view. And yeah, thank you.
It was great. And I feel like I learned a ton talking with you. You were so gracious in making some introductions to some other folks in the industry that turned me on to some new concepts through research and white papers that they were doing. It's a great way to share knowledge, and it's been fun for me to be on that advisory board for Radical for many years now. I enjoyed seeing them. It was quite a surprise going through one of the big expos here in Las Vegas and seeing the student design portion of that competition. There's a professional category and a student category. And as soon as I saw that, I tried to figure out how to get UNLV involved, how to get our hospitality design concentration on the radar of students or around the world that have identified that they have an interest in working in the hospitality industry.
And that's one of the things I love so much about radical innovation as well. And also why I see you have your UNLV shirt on and you have the UNLV mug. But one of the things I love about radical innovation is, especially with the students, right? Because they haven't been encumbered with building codes, physics, feasibilities yet. And they're really able to push the limits. So some of the professional projects as well also are like pushing the limits of what's possible. And I love that. But I also think you just being in Las Vegas is such a laboratory and it's not fully unencumbered, because there are still you still have to deal with gravity. You still have to deal with building codes and entitlements and budgets and all these other things. But it just seems to be on such an incredible scale. Every property that I walk into in Vegas, I'm just always blown away. And to be able to have students studying design, it's like they're in the ultimate laboratory of pushing the limits and moonshots, continual moonshots. So how I'd like to weave that in is as it pertains to hospitality and all that laboratory that Las Vegas brings. And also, I definitely see an overlap with why you're attracted to and continue to support radical innovation. But what is like, how do you define hospitality? What does it mean to you? And what's keeping you pushing the limits of design within hospitality?
Okay, so defining hospitality, I'm going to give a long-winded answer.
Great. You're a professor. You're allowed to.
It has evolved really over my. I'm in my 20th year of teaching, and I'm from the Midwest. Went to school out east, and um, through my entire upbringing, I loved music, theater, the performing arts, all forms of entertainment, and to me that was um, the component of hospitality that I was most attracted to. Uh, so moving out to the entertainment capital of the world was initially like my little piece of the hospitality world, the opportunity to work on some of those projects that you mentioned. Um, but the definition for me has expanded quite a bit over the last 2 decades. I moved out to Las Vegas really expecting to see an embrace of hospitality, design, education. But at the school, we would only occasionally take a fleeting glance at what was happening just a mile or two from campus within our design program. And I saw there was a missed opportunity. There's huge projects going up all the time and remodels happening uh, continuously year round every year. Las Vegas is reinventing itself. Like you said, it's a laboratory, living laboratory. Um, and so about 15, 16 years ago almost now, we started a hospitality design concentration in our graduate program, the Master of Architecture program at UNLV. And it took a lot of discussion, creating new program, new curriculum, and there were concerns. When you're in Las Vegas and you say hospitality, it means to a lot of people it means uh, casino resorts, hotels, and casinos. Kind of that's it. That's hospitality, and that's a huge driver. That's what really drives our economy. Um, but more and more, that has changed. It's not just casinos that attract people to Las Vegas. It is these other forms of entertainment, and so I I heard from professionals in the community, from colleagues saying, "Well, let's do this hospitality concentration. It's about time, but also let's not become known as the casino design school," which which I can understand that uh, casinos have and likely will always have some stigma associated with them. Um, but it's also a huge design opportunity, understanding how these things work.
Well, I'm actually curious about like, what would the stigma be? Because to me, and I'm not a designer, nor do I play one on TV, but when you're working on a casino project, to envision the really, it's almost like an infinite form and all of the detail and the amount of people that walk through, and then to create all these little moments, and then also to disorient. There's just so much that you can play with. To me, it would just seem like, and also like with the ultimate goal of driving revenue and profit for said casino, it just seems to me like that's the ultimate like tabula rasa or white white page or whiteboard that you can like really push the limits on. Like it just seems like every designer's dream.
Yeah, it you might think that, and I think a handful of architects in the industry would agree. But you use the word disorient, and that is something that is associated with particularly casinos of the past. Um, People recognize that they were sort of designed to, um, if disorient isn't the right word, to confuse, to attract, to contain. The idea of once you're in the casino, they want you to stay there and spend all your money.
Well, I agree. Okay, so and that's super interesting to me too, because like if you think about disorientation or like sometimes anxiety, like actually maybe anxiety, right? Anxiety, while it might feel bad at one point, on the immediate other side of that coin, it's excitement, right? And so that disorientation in the same way can also be like super exciting, right? And so I don't know if, and I guess I see where you're coming from with that idea of a stigma, but to me, to really be able to push the envelope, it just seems like to be able to design for that is just, and design is really about solving problems and finding alignment and finding the best path forward. It just seems like that's the most incredible place that someone could work.
And I wouldn't disagree with you. I think it is very exciting. That's part of what attracted me to Las Vegas. I see it as another component of the entertainment world. It's these are exciting environments, um, but a lot of uh, a lot of students in architecture, a lot of professionals in architecture, uh, might might tend to gravitate toward different forms of architectural craft. The Going back to the term disorient, some might equate that with a kind of dishonesty in the form, that there's some, it's a lot of thematic, theatrics. Uh, I don't wanna say smoke and mirrors, but literally, many casinos had been filled with smoke, and they had mirrored sieves. So
But it's also in the same way that like this idea of disorientation actually is really fascinating to me because if you go to a large theme park as well, I think one of the things that they do so well, aside from separating parents from their wallets very effectively, they just waiting in line, the never ending line, they disorient you while you're in line so you don't feel like you're in line. It transports you. It keeps you occupied. And to me, that I think because people are always changing, and if you look at the cross section of people that go through a casino floor, it's every kind of person you could ever imagine. So somehow, whatever that disorientation or that excitement or that experience is, it's on such a large scale, but it's like laser focused on delighting in some way the passerby.
yeah, absolutely, and I think because you can look anywhere, practically anywhere on the strip and see, uh, very different groups of people attracted to very, uh, diverse sets of environments and being thoroughly entertained by them. That's what attracted me to excuse me, to see this as a learning opportunity. That the proof was in the the attendance that, you mentioned, uh, the idea of generating revenue through these elaborate environments. And again, I think that has been a missing component in a lot of architectural schools teachings that, while there are some that may focus on the business of architecture, um, more often than not, at least in my experience, I was trained as an architect. and I understand how buildings go together. I understand how we would analyze the site. I understand, but I would critique my own formal education as not spending nearly enough time understanding how architectural decisions translate into revenue.
It's the business case of architecture, right? In many cases, the business case for an office building is like, how do you maximize your rents, right? It's pretty simple, although nothing is simple. I don't want to discourage or disgruntle any office building designers. But when you think of hotels and casinos, and especially large format with all the experiences and shows and everything that Vegas, there is there's so much throughput and revenue opportunity in them, and to design for that must be really exciting. And if you think about, I know you said you came from the Midwest, but you must get applications for people to come to your architecture school from all over the country and world, I would bet. And then what is the type of student that thrives? Like if you were like the Harry Potter selection hat, right? And it goes around, what would make what attracts that student? What's that ideal student that would come under the umbrella of Las Vegas and learn how to push the envelope at UNLV?
Great question. No one answer for sure. We do attract students from around the world, and they come from across the country as well. I think so. This may help me continue my definition of hospitality for the earlier question, because um, so students that come from far away, not Las Vegas locals, um, be, are very different than those students that grew up here. We attract a lot of our graduate students come through the Clark County School District or other schools in Southern Nevada. They'll they'll go through our undergraduate program and decide to stay here. For them, the Strip is familiar. They grew up with it. For somebody across the country or around the world, they're seeing the Strip with new eyes. It's like um, a dreamscape for them. Um, and both of those student backgrounds kind of coming together result in very different outcomes through the program. So um, some students, they may understand, boy, Las Vegas has a lot to teach. Reminds me of the book Learning from Las Vegas. You can always learn from Las Vegas, whether you're about to design an integrated resort or you're interested in other archetypes. So within the hospitality uh, concentration, and my definition of hospitality design is it, it's not just casinos and hotels. It's as you know from your time in the industry and all the other guests you've had on this show. It's restaurants, it's meeting space, all of these things that come together in these extremely complex integrated resorts. Each one of them is their own little microcosm of hospitality. It gets even bigger though, because those students that look at the integrated resort or Las Vegas's version of hospitality at large, um, they might go, I really, um, I'm passionate about schools or office spaces or residential design. And the hospitality definition that we've we've begun to share with more and more students is you can be you can have hospitality in these quote unquote non-hospitality archetypes. There's no reason why we can't be as engaging toward students in a classroom as the example you shared of people waiting in line for a ride in an amusement park. Um, there's equivalence to revenue that you're generating. If you're generating attention and focus in a school, and making learning a fun endeavor, you're making a really positive impact using principles of hospitality design in schools. You can apply principles of hospitality in the workplace, in homes, and so it kind of has a ripple effect. You can learn from Las Vegas and apply those lessons outside of our traditional uh, notions of hospitality design.
I understand the discomfort with that, the word of disorientation, but I'm going to go disorientation, excitement, basically this emotional movement, right? So there's a hotel or a building that functions, right? There's a functionality to it, right? The structure facilitates the function. But how in Vegas in particular, I think, okay, there's always the functionality for all those different programmatic areas of the footprint of a building or a residential community or you name it. But how do you, from a design perspective, as a teacher, how do you bridge that gap of, okay, it functions, but how do we get this to be like super dramatic that will move you, right? That to me, that emotional highlight is just a very difficult thing to teach, especially when you're coming, if especially if it's like a graduate degree, or you already have like some kind of example of how the world works and how things are built. Going to Vegas, just structurally, just the scale is just insane. So how do you get people to learn about that, just materiality and just the spans and just all of the materials to get it to where people have these incredibly positive or maybe even negative experiences, but it's all an emotional explosion.
There isn't a formula on how to teach this for sure. Each project is very different. I I am always the first to tell my students I don't know everything there is to know about integrated resorts. I've worked on the design of several of them. Um, I visit them as often as my schedule allows, learning how new projects are coming together. Um, but I would say y- you you don't try to teach it as if it's a formula because if it becomes formulaic, it can't produce the same aha effect because you anticipate it. You become numb to it, and so from the earlier years of the hospitality, we call it the HD concentration, the HD studio in the grad program. I didn't try to teach students how to do any of it. Instead, um, I would ask them to critique it. D- Take a look at what has been built either here in Las Vegas, or we would look at um, hospitality projects in cities around the world. Fantastic projects by all measures, but then ask them, well, how would you make it better? Um, Asking questions, and and back to your question of how do you get students to um, marry that functional aspect with the emotional side of things. There's a lot of experimentation that we get to do in a design studio. There isn't a right answer for the sort of projects and problems that we assign. Instead, um, students would develop their hypothesis of what would make this better. Let me show you what I think would create this sort of response from a prospective guest. And our design reviews then are made up of other professionals in the hospitality industry. It might be architects, it might be hotel executives. It might be other faculty. We reach across to other disciplines in the university, uh, and we gauge, many different iterations of these design. I don't want to call it a solution, a design proposal, uh, to better understand. Well, how could you change the proportions of this, the colors here?
But I guess where I'm trying to go is like if I were to look at the world and look at Las Vegas, I would put it in the same neighborhood as like Abu Dhabi, Dubai. Pick a large city with like architectural innovation in China somewhere that's really pushing the limit, right? A lot of the innovation that comes from doing these large format, like hard to get your head around projects. There's a lot of innovation that comes through structurally, materially. What's what, whether in Vegas or somewhere else, is there from an architectural perspective, what's one of the biggest, maybe most more under discussed innovations that you've seen to make one of these buildings come to life?
Technologically, the nuts and bolts of architecture, w- we can figure out how to design anything. The challenge is, getting acceptance for a project, getting community buy-in, all of the stakeholders, politicians, et cetera, to say, let's move forward with this project. I think something like the Sphere is a good example. Like 20 years ago, if you would have said, we're going to build a giant immersive performing arts venue, you could stick the Statue of Liberty inside of it and see, you know, digital displays 360 degrees. We might think you're crazy, but when you know, and really, if you were to propose something like that in any other city in the world, which I understand they proposed it in multiple areas, with some pushback. Las Vegas, back to our idea of calling this a living laboratory, there were enough folks here that said, "Bring it," and so you pull design professionals that could pull that off.
And also, I think just how they innovated that from the sonic direction out. I don't even know the words for it, but like how they can point the sound different places, the 3D or no, the fully like the I don't even know, like the big LCD or LED screens on the inside and the outside. I bet you that just how does that even survive outside in Las Vegas? I think there's going to be some innovations from that that are going to apply to places that we can't even imagine. Selfishly, I haven't seen a show there yet. I've been trying to go see Fish, but the tickets always just get too darn expensive. But selfishly, I'm so grateful for the Sphere because it took MSG and James Dolan's focus to get that thing
Yeah.
open. And then he wasn't meddling in the Knicks very much. So the Knicks became very good over the past couple of years. And I'm chalking that up to his attention on the Sphere. But
Win-win.
I think that that's an incredible example of how that also is just like transformative to the skyline as
Yeah.
well and tells a whole other
Yeah,
story.
and I like to think, if you rewind the clock and look back at other smaller innovations along the strip, many of these things sort of lead up to the kinds of innovations that we see in the Sphere. 30 years ago, the Luxor, this giant pyramid, world's largest indoor atrium, and the bright light on top has some similarities. The iconic form, the unusual building type, or uh, the the structure used to create that, and then marquee signs up and down the strip have gotten so much more sophisticated in the last 15 to 20 years. They used to be, just the flashing neon, and then the addition of LEDs, the merger of moving parts with LEDs, um, and continuously bigger and bigger. You know, there was a
Yeah.
5 to 10 year span of towers going up, hotel towers, each one outdoing the previous in height by a couple inches or a couple stories, and just the architectural uh, portfolio of Vegas, sort of showing how you make incremental progress, and then every once in a while, huge innovations like the sphere.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. From the students that are attracted to UNLV and to your program, there's a whole spectrum. There's a gamut. There's not one typology of student that would come and excel there. It's everyone. But can you share an example of someone that started working there? You don't have to name names, but just, and maybe you can combine a couple different people. But I'm always intrigued by someone who grew up in the Midwest and maybe hadn't traveled a lot, or someone from somewhere else, anywhere in the world that hasn't seen that strip and the buildings within the strip and that laboratory that's at your doorstep, right? What is it? Are you ever with any students when it's like the first time they're experiencing this large scale craziness that Las Vegas offers from an architectural perspective?
Shock seems to be kind of a common experience. The challenge of wrapping their head around the scale of things, and you hear that even from uh, tourists within the U.S. Like, you can see
Mhm.
one of the resorts a couple doors down, and if you think, oh, it'll only take a minute or two to walk next door, and
30 minutes later, you're stiletting.
but they come probably anticipating a little bit of that, but to see it, to see how thorough a lot of the design is. It's not just big, it's not just bright and flashy from the outside, but when you begin to walk through, and not just the casino, but the shops, the theater spaces, you start to really appreciate that, boy, every square inch of this entire facility and millions of square feet have been carefully considered. And that allows them to sort of dream that big and bigger. So the idea, back to uh Dolan's sphere, started as a napkin sketch, right? Like, and that was enough to get the ball rolling and to turn it into a reality. And when students that have never seen, or maybe they've seen it, but when you have the opportunity to tackle a HD studio project or propose something of your own, you're the bar has been raised for sure when you're here in Las Vegas. And so the student's version of a napkin sketch is kind of the equivalent. They're not as encumbered by budget and building inspection approvals, because we're still designing fictional projects, but with a level of realism, because we want to push them. We understand that the students that are graduating from the program are going to be going into the firms that are actually tapped to do these projects. So many
Mm.
of the integrated resorts around the world have involvement by the local architects here in Las Vegas. Like, this is such a unique archetype. There aren't that many that have the
Yeah.
expertise, the experience.
I can imagine, like, when I think about the playland that Vegas must be for an architect or a designer or an engineer, to me, the next unencumbered place to play, like where you could really push it, is probably video game design, right? Because I'm sure, I don't know this, I'm just going out on a limb. I'm sure a lot of video game designers or companies have architects that work with them, and they don't have to deal with gravity and structures and everything, but you get the feeling that these things might work in the real world. And I would also think that we're talking a lot about the finished product. I bet as a student in UNLV or at UNLV, I'm sure you guys must go to job sites as they're building these crazy structures and to see how the engineers and how the general contractors and sequence everything and put everything together. Do your students get to put on hard hats and walk job sites? And what is it like when they see that?
I'm the architect licensing advisor at our school and for the state of Nevada. And one of the things I do outside of class assignments is organize hard hat tours. So we took a group of about 40 students, one of the few granted access to the sphere when it was under construction. But over the years, because it's an educational focus, we're able to see a lot of the projects going up on the strip, understand how they're being put together. Um, and for students, that's one of the most amazing experiences because we're able to
Mm,
see the construction documents. They'll either unroll them or now it's all on digital screens and tablets and see how the drawings are being translated into the actual object in the field. Um,
some architectural students, I'm sure, I want to focus on the design and building the structure, but I'm sure some students that maybe go through your program, they're there, and then when they see the things being built, they're like, oh wow, I love the idea of coming up with that sketch on the napkin as a designer, but also I'm really intrigued by how this large scale, huge forms get put together, and like how do you communicate these bent steel uh, columns and beams to like come together in the form of a sphere or whatever it is at the end, or even using the sphere again. I just can't imagine how all that is. It LED? Is it LED or LCD? I don't know
LED.
what it is. LED. I don't know how. Just on the exterior, the LED, the the sphere. There's space between the structure and the LED screen, and then there's expansion and contraction. Because I assume Vegas must get that surface of that stuff must get over,
Very hot.
like approach boiling or hotter to super cold, and then I'm sure like critters and things get in there, and so they must be learning how these things function and build as they're building it if they've never built it before. And there's such a, again, going back to that idea of what draws you to radical innovation in New York, there's so much radical innovation in just putting these damn things together in Las Vegas that just changes the way things are built.
When you see these projects under construction, now one of the biggest on the strip is the giant guitar tower, part of the Hard Rock rebrand of Mirage. The Mirage it's really recognized as the first integrated resort. It had all of the theater, the shops, the casino, thousands of rooms, hotel. But now they're building similar to what Hard Rock did in Florida, but at a scale even bigger. Um, when students see these kinds of projects up close, they begin to understand the complexity of the architecture is a reflection of the complexity and diversity of the teams involved. So,
Mhm.
yeah, the architects play a major and leading role, but your example of how to bend the steel or the purchasing, like all of these all of these elements of the construction process tie their architectural education into so many other disciplines across the the entire university in my world, or the entire uh, the entire population in terms of just the outside of campus life.
And the global
Yeah,
supply
yeah.
chain.
So
Like these ideas that start on a napkin and have never been done before. Like, how do you do it? And I love that you said the purchasing side, because somehow you have to take that napkin, turn it into a full drawing, then actually find, I assume those LEDs were made in Korea. Find this Korean,
yeah,
were they? I'm
yeah,
just going out on a limb there.
yeah.
Okay. Find like, how did we make that one thing in Korea and have it attached? It's just so incredible. And then also, as UNLV and being a state school, you must have opportunity, just not just in Las Vegas, but beyond Vegas, to just have an impact on how the state is dealing with all the land that's around you as well, from like a social, economic, sustainable, and design perspective, right? You guys must get brought into so many cool projects throughout Nevada. Is that true?
Yeah, we have all kinds of opportunities. You just got to constantly be open to those. I mean that the purchasing discussion reminds me of a visit we had um, toward the beginning of the year, right after the announcement of tariffs, and we had students asking these brilliant questions about, well, how does that impact the steel on this project? And um, the foreman was able to tell us, oh, that steel has been here for a month already, so not affected. Is probably because everything was being shipped, uh, mostly unaffected for the entire project. But the next project, um, but like,
No, no, the tariffs are going to bring the prices down for everything.
we'll
Sorry.
see. Um, but the idea
But
of just impacting architecture across the state, I mean that reminds me of uh, again previous question and thinking beyond the strip. Like some students um, think about opportunities that are not just nestled in our tourist corridor. Um, we have uh, one of the past radical innovation winners. And this was maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Uh, had proposed some kind of space tourism and was designing
hmm,
hotel rooms that would orbit Earth. You know, taking what at the time was completely science fiction and showing how it really could be a conceivable thing. And just in the last year, we've seen developers proposing real world space tourism launch sites out in the desert of Nevada. Um,
hmm.
whether or not they come to fruition, it's really becoming that much closer. From Las Vegas, I can see, uh, when rockets are launched out of California. It's um, and that's maybe where one future of hospitality is going.
That's a future one. I'm glad it's happening, but I have no desire to sleep in
I,
space. I like what we got going on here. But I'm glad that we're pushing it because other people should like that. Like, I don't want to be the first person sailing across the ocean thinking that the world might be flat. But I'm glad people did that before us because, again, it's that idea of innovation and always
yep.
pushing. And I just think that Las Vegas offers that opportunity for those, call them design cowboys and girls, to come and like really push the envelope and continue to innovate. You were mentioning also, I know in the intro that you also founded a company. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
So the company Arrow AI is a technology startup. We've been now in business for just over 3 years, and I would say, in large part, thanks to this growing entrepreneurial design uh, or business development push from the university to see uh, more innovations that create an economic driver for the state. Um, it inspired me and a couple former students um, to to just think about some of the work that was happening in our uh, design discussions and look for ways to fit that into the industry. So, um, what is normally very fiction based, when we're doing our napkin sketches, as far as a project goes, is a pin up on the wall, typically in architecture school, or a little physical model that you can hold and turn around. Um, and my student had designed a proposal for a vertiport, like an airport, but for drones, and to
Huh.
integrate those like one more thing, like to for an integrated resort. They have everything: the restaurants, the meeting space, um, but it would be hard to consider them transportation hubs, although their transportation infrastructure is pretty robust. None of them, besides maybe a couple helipads here and there for emergency uses only, would have a vertiport, and uh, that in
And is that for drones for product or for people?
both. You could imagine
Oh,
being able to um, order up room service from another property and have something, or go shopping and have your suit or dress delivered directly from across town. Um,
cool.
so that was the fictional thing, and there are businesses out there now that do that. It's super fascinating, um, but uh, because I'm architecture design process oriented, we looked at taking drones and scanning vacant sites, projects under construction, completed works. Uh, so equipping drones with uh, 3D scanners, LiDAR,
Oh, no
and
way.
uh, more than that, developing ways to take the 3D models that we could generate and make them highly interactive. So um, it's always fun when you're working in Revit or SketchUp to kind of pan through or create your own animation to better understand this digital model that you've created. It's difficult to turn those tools over to non-architects if you're not familiar with how to use the software. Um, but taking even a Revit model or a scan from a drone of a real project, we can merge these two things together. And then the platform that we've developed at Arrow AI makes it so intuitive. You can navigate through these environments as if you're playing a video game. It using game engine technology. Walk around with your avatar, walk through buildings, and the fact that we can merge the digital model in a scanned uh, replica of a site, you can really begin to experience, like, what is the exact view I have from this particular room, or what's my experience walking in from the street or driving from fill in the blank. So it's a way to share the anticipated experience, or different versions of a proposed experience, that is, frankly, it is kind of unmatched. We've assembled such a rock star team. My co-founders, Victory Igbinobaro and Richard Bergstrom. The team has grown quite a bit in the last few years, and we're
Wow.
doing a lot of scans that uh, kind of simplify the way we can interact with these extremely complex sites and often more complex buildings, uh, integrated resorts, especially, but really any hotel. We don't limit ourselves to just the hospitality industry, but because of uh, our networks, that's where a lot of our work has been focused. And uh, earlier, when you mentioned something about video game design, I thought that would have been a good time for me to mention this because we not only are we making the interaction with these virtual spaces more accessible, like you are playing a video game, but um, the AI component of our company, Arrow AI, is we are really leveraging artificial intelligence and dropping uh, AI bots into these models that we create to help guide guests. So we can have multiple people taking a visit to our virtual site. And it can be a tour. It can be a Q&A session. We would train the AI bots on everything about the forthcoming project. Um, we've seen just so many overlaps in
Wow.
opportunities. Like 10, 15 years ago, I was involved, maybe not even that long ago, 9 or 10 years ago, involved in a master planning uh, project. It was a funded research project through UNLV and our downtown design center, working on a master plan for the historic West Side neighborhood in Las Vegas. And what was produced was pretty pretty great work. A lot of community involvement, a lot of expertise from the university and the profession, and the outcome was a robust report, 100 plus pages, static drawings, kind of what you get in a lot of master planning exercises or community design charrettes. A report at the outcome. Um, And fast forward to today, that report still, it sits on plenty of shelves or in the files of somebody's computer, and only a little bit of momentum has been developed in in actually seeing some of those plans come to fruition. What we hope to do is leverage these newer technologies that create interactive virtual models and invite not just community members or other stakeholders into a project in an early planning phase, and then we write it all down and then we bind it and call it done. Uh, where we all have to get together in a same room or on one Zoom call, but
So in essence, they can just like plug
they
in
can drop in.
and go.
They can visit
That's
virtually
cool.
anytime. They can leave their comments, and people can meet in the virtual space. And these spaces, um, you know, when we scan a vacant site, we can toggle with a button, different proposals for that site so that people can see, like, this is what this developer is proposing, or uh, this is what we can produce with this kind of budget versus this kind of budget. Or if we can look at, yeah, all sorts of variables can be built in and collect feedback. It kind of comes back to um, that notion we talked about earlier of just experimentation in the design studio. Now you're able to really share these experiments that really could and should happen in the real world. Let's see what we can build. Let's try to better anticipate what the benefits and the reactions amongst the community might be.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, Glenn, and say, from what attracted you, when did you start at UNLV?
2006.
Okay, 2006. So you have your UNLV. you're in this exciting lab of innovation of Las Vegas. 8 years ago, plus or minus, you're attracted to radical innovation, working with companies and students from all over the world to continue to push innovation in design and in hospitality. And then by meeting these other students and other partners, creating this innovative company called Aero AI, if you imagine a Venn diagram of those three things, right? Innovation in all of
Yeah.
them, but they do overlap. Take that Venn diagram and tell me what excites you most about where you sit into the future.
Yeah. Um, really to see that Venn diagram replicated over and over. There,
Mhm.
every year, there are students that come from all over the world, uh, both to radical, they're submitting to radical innovation design competition, and they're applying to graduate school, whether it's here at UNLV or anywhere. But uh, to see that, okay, the next generation is coming up with these really cool ideas. How do we support those ideas to address the critical real world thing, the challenge that's making them not real yet, but just a couple things to work through so that they become the next wow experience that we all get to go see.
It's almost like if you take that Venn diagram and replicate it over and over for the students that are coming into you and to touch all parts of this Venn diagram, it's almost as if you're giving them the experience and the tools and the mindset to turn that napkin sketch into whatever the next sphere is or into whatever that next thing is. You're arming them to be able to adapt and innovate.
Yeah, yeah. My critique of um, some of my own experiences in academia when I was a student and even early teaching was we had so many great ideas that at the end of the semester you pin them up on the wall, you have your model, you get some feedback, and then you roll it up and it goes away. Um, for for the last uh, 10, 15 years, I've been pushing for the students to think, how do I continue this beyond my graduation happening in a few more months? Because otherwise, you go to work, you start doing the 9 to 5, you're working on something where you're being told this is what we got to do versus
Mm-hmm.
driving the change or critiquing, asking how things could be so much better. Um, and I get the students
Love
to
it.
just brainstorm like, all right, if this were to be its own business, what would that be? Is there something in this project that I could patent? Is there something that I ought to publish? Is there a community partnership? Like, how do I reach out and connect the dots between this this thing that was a napkin sketch and now it's a really fancy rendering and a detailed set of drawings? Who really needs to see it? How do I make it become that much closer to reality?
So as as I think about as I'm hearing you say that, I'm going back to the Venn diagram and like in that middle part of where they all converge. If I love these magic wand questions, but if I were to give you a magic wand and you could do your dream project, no zoning, no budget, no RFP, based on being in the middle of those three intersections, what would it be?
Dream project. Um, we have a bit of a dream project opportunity. It's still very far off on the horizon, but uh, a 2,000-acre North Campus is being discussed at UNLV. It's currently, I think, current still federal land that's in the process of being uh, transferred to the university. 2,000 acres is massive. We have a campus of over 30,000 students, and the main campus is right now 300 and I think 90 acres. So 2,000 is huge, and it's barren desert. Um, and our HD seminar was asked just over a year ago to just brainstorm, treat it as a tabula rasa. What could happen?
Mm.
And the magic wand question makes me think, well, obviously anything could happen. From, I mean, we were talking about space tourism 20 minutes ago to, we've got uh, the Tesla tunnels running through our city now. Like anything you could dream, the sphere, anything you could dream could become a reality given the right conditions.
Oh, I love
And
it.
so,
When do you think it'll take the next steps going forward?
I think there's some remediation that has to happen on that land. Um, but I think
Cool.
it's such a huge plot that it, portions of it could possibly start to see some development in the next 4 or 5 years. But this would be
Awesome.
probably a decades long endeavor. And this also kind of brings me back to the definitions of hospitality. It's it this site is not like our current campus. Our many campuses, you can tell when you've arrived at campus, it's different than a lot of the surroundings. This portion of the desert has the ability to kind of reach out and touch on so many communities around the Las Vegas Valley. Um, a lot of people don't even realize Las Vegas. The Strip is not part of the city of Las Vegas. It's in Paradise, the unincorporated township. Uh, Clark County has City of Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Henderson, and um, I think a a future vision, the magic wand version of a North Campus would be open to connections with all of these different stakeholders in our broader community. So, hospitality is just an openness to others. That's almost verbatim a quote of Jacques Derrida's definition of hospitality.
Mm.
Radical openness to others is what he said. And I think
Oh,
a project that has students thinking about, well, how does this not just make a hotel guest feel great, or how does this generate the most revenue from uh, this casino player, but how can this be a space that is uh, hospitable toward fill in the blank? I really just want to dream really big, like
I love it.
people.
I think that that would be a really cool tabula rasa for contestants in radical innovation to play with, right? Like, what could that be? Um, because again, you just said radical again, having that well mapped, clean space in North Las Vegas of 2,000 acres, that could be a fun playground. Um, and I don't know, that's really exciting. I got to wrap this up right now, but I want to say, Glenn, this has been such a wonderful exploration with you. And I'm so happy that you're involved and passionate about radical innovation and all the work that you've done to create this Venn diagram and trying to be in the middle of the intersections as much as possible. I just want to say thank you for your time and
Dan, thank
experience.
you. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to another great semester at UNLV, and hope to attract more students to participate in that radical hospitality design competition. And yeah, let's keep in touch. This is fun.
Awesome. And thank you to all of our listeners, because without you, I wouldn't be at Radical Innovation. I wouldn't be bumping into Glenn and having these awesome conversations and being able to share them with you and to better understand the laboratory that Las Vegas is. So thank you all very much. We'll catch you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank